It's Morning Joe and the Pro, the first one of the week. We planned on doing one every day, but I got stuck 2 days traveling, couldn't get home. Monday, I was supposed to be home. All flights were canceled from New York to Toronto. Then Tuesday, I was supposed to be home. The flight was delayed 5 hours. I got home after midnight. And yesterday, too busy a day catching up. So here we are. I got the great Tony Finn with us and the legend himself, Ralph Michaels, the man with the numbers, the most knowledgeable sports bettor around. Let's start with you, Tony. How are you doing, brother?
Outstanding. I woke up. That's a good day for somebody as old and gray as me. But you're starting to look. Have you been doing something? Your hair is looking a lot darker over the last few days.
I have not done a thing. It's probably the lighting. Speaking of hair, Ralph, how are you?
Doing great. Couldn't you just say that since the U.S. had a governmental shutdown, that the president also had to have a shutdown for a few days?
Okay, there you go.
Huge.
No, I'm just gonna tell him the truth. Boys, we're talking props today. NFL props. We're gonna keep this show tight. So what we'll do is we'll go to you, Ralph, first. I'd like to hear some props that you plan on betting and why, and then Tony will boot over to you. And if you want to jump in on anything Ralph has to say, please go ahead. Ralph, give us maybe your top 5 props.
Well, my number one prop, clearly, total sacks by the Rams defense under 1.5. You have a great defensive line for the Rams, yes. 4 number 1 draft choices. But Tom Brady, since they lost Josh Gordon, they've gone to a ground and pound attack. He's only been sacked twice. He's only been sacked 2 times or more. 1 time the last 8 games. He wasn't touched in the playoffs. You have the hot receiver in Edelman. He knows where he's going. You have 3 running backs that know how to chip block. So my number one is under 1.5 sacks, and you're actually plus $1.30 in that. My second one, first score of the game, plus 450. Basically, 4 things can happen. Rams touchdown, Rams field goal, New England touchdown, New England field goal. Well, the Rams are plus 450. In the 2 Super Bowls, Belichick has won the coin toss the last 5 years. He's deferred. You have one of the best field goal kickers kicking indoors, and you're getting 4.5 to 1 on that prop. First turnover, I bet fumble, plus 160. Again, 2 things can occur, an interception or a fumble. I believe the Rams are going to try to run the ball. They don't want Goff to throw early to make that mistake. We know New England's offense has changed. So, again, first turnover, fumble, plus 160. And my other top prop, highest scoring half, the second half versus the first. You're only minus 120. The reason is the Rams and the Patriots were such a high-scoring first-half team this year. Dissect that schedule a little deeper. Both of those teams had huge first halves. They got off to huge first-half leads against inferior opponents and didn't need to score in the second half. We saw in the playoffs what they can do in the second half with a closer game. So highest scoring half, second half, and overtime, that was minus 125.
Tony, do you want to add to any thoughts to Ralph's specific props? And then after that, I will talk to them.
I don't want to add anything. I agree with. In fact, his sacks prop is he's going with New England alone, and one of my props is total sacks, which is under 3.5 for both sides. So yeah, I like what Ralph had to say.
No, and it's funny because I just sent my props in to be put to for our listeners, and I've got 16 props that I'm going to be betting. Some of them are of big value, and others are, close to the pick'em. And 2 of those props, in keeping with what Ralph said, is like you, Tony. I'm playing under 3.5 sacks in the game as well. And my reasoning is similar to Ralph's. I mean, Brady hasn't been sacked at all in the playoffs. He's releasing the ball extremely fast. They're playing a lot of runs, and they're not stretching the field, which means he doesn't need time in the pocket. The other thing is I'm also playing Aaron Donald at plus 175 to not have a sack. So we are all on the same page in regards to the sacks. As for the second half highest score, Ralph, I'm with you 100% here. That's one of my favorite props of the week. My reasoning is simple, and we spoke about this in the NFL presidential address. I believe that New England is going to come out and run the ball. I think they're going to run the ball at least their first 2 drives, 7 out of 10 times. We've seen this already with Kansas City and the Chargers, and I think they're going to play a lot of ball control here. And I like the first half under as a bet, and I like the over on the game as a bet. So I am rock solid behind you on that second half bet. As far as the Rams to score first, your reasoning is sound, but I have no thoughts on that. And I can't bet first turnover. There's too many variables in play. Tony, what are your thoughts prop-wise?
Yeah, first, let's preface this. I like what Ralph outlined, and I like what you outlined as well. And one of the things about props is what we're discussing, at least from what I gather and what I've heard, is that we're sending props to the listening audience that are high percentage, that are basically statistical based rather than coin flips, or like you said, those kind of things that are they're really almost the coin flip, for instance. It's over before the game even starts. The props that we have outlined, for the most part, a lot of times aren't going to be decided until the last 3 or 4 minutes. So if your team is out of the game, at least you have something to root for throughout the whole game with the group you're with, and most people take part Super Bowl at house-based parties. Quickly, because I know that I'm going to take up all the time if you let me. One of the other, Prez, you outlined it nicely. The Patriots don't have a player to stretch the field, and that's one of the reasons that Belichick has schemed as he did against Kansas City. No sacks. In fact, he was never touched. The only time he was touched was the phantom.
Chris Jones.
Exactly right. Was a phantom penalty. I like under 36.5 yards. You can find 37.5 yards for Brady's longest completion of the day. Essentially, to exceed that yardage, it's going to have to be a lot of yak. It's going to have to be yards after catch, because he's releasing the ball with under 3 seconds. New England has the top offensive line in holding pass rushes off their quarterback, 2.5 seconds. New England's offensive line has held their blocks in passing situations, top in the leagues. That's one. And also total penalties by the New England Patriots. I like the over 4.5 in that, and I like total penalty yards by New England over 35.5 yards. And for one reason on this, after the Saints game last week, and I think you're going to see, they'll never verbalize it, they'll never admit it, but these guys are going to throw flags. If there's any question at all, they're going to throw a flag and let instant replay make the decision. They're not going to have that controversy. And note this, the lead official in this game, the man wearing the white hat behind the quarterback, has thrown the second most this year. Perry. Josh Perry is his name. Pari, depending on how you want to pronounce it, has thrown the most roughing the quarterback penalties in the league. 3 of the guys that are in this game, 2 or 3 of them are their first Super Bowl. I just believe over those penalty yards, I think it's going to be tightly called. You may see some holdings. I think 4.5 for the over 4.5 is a good play on New England, and over 36.5 yards too as well.
He's Tony Finn. We got Ralph Michaels with us. I'm the Prez. Ralph, I like Tony's thoughts on the under 36.5 yards by Brady. I mean, really, the only way it's going to get over that total is with bad tackling, because I don't see him throwing the ball 40 yards to a completion. Gronk's not stretching the field. Edelman is playing in the slot. Cordell Patterson might be the only player that might be able to get anywhere near that type of yardage. I think that's a real good prop. What are your thoughts?
I agree, and just to put some numbers behind it, Tony, in the playoffs, Brady's longest pass was 30 and 35 yards against the Chargers and the Chiefs. His last 2 regular season games against the Jets and Buffalo, his long was 20 and 32. And again, that is all post-Gordon. Once Josh Gordon was off the team and being able to extend the field, and Rex Burkhead came back, Rex Burkhead missed games 5 through 12. Adding another running back to the staple has really changed the offense completely.
Listen, if I can intervene here a little bit, that's a great point. If the average yards passing attempt for Brady with Gordon was 8 and change, and without Gordon, 6 and change. And you're absolutely right. Gordon was the only pseudo guy who could stretch the field. I agree with you 100%. Very good point.
I'm going to give you a couple of, some props that I like that we can talk about. So we already started with the highest scoring half. That's one of my favorite props at the second half. I love the total sacks under 3.5. We spoke about that. That's one of my favorite props. What I also love, though, and probably my favorite prop, period, is Rex Burkhead under 19.5 yards rushing. We've seen Sony Michel just light it up. He set a record a number of touchdowns as a rookie in the playoffs already at 5. They're going to, you've got James White coming out of the backfield, a real pass-catching running back. And Rex is really their short yardage specialist. I think 19.5 is a lot to ask. I mean, Rex, if Rex gets the ball 5 times in a running situation, he's going to have to average 4 yards each time. And, Rex is one of those 3rd and 1 backs. I mean, there's a legitimate argument that he doesn't rush the ball more than 3 times this game. And he could be caught in the backfield a couple of times. He's not a fast-moving guy, and he's running in between the tackles. So, we're not going outside. He's not breaking runs. So long as the Rams can tackle him at the first level, I don't see how he can go over 19.5 yards. Ralph?
Well, he did have 41 yards against Kansas City, but let me preface it by saying he had 12 carries for 3.4 yards per carry. In that game against the Chargers, 4 carries for 12 yards. Moving back to the end of the regular season, he did carry the ball 33 times the last 5 games. So he did touch the ball 6 times per game. It's not a prop. I actually looked at Rex Burkhead to touch the ball over the 4 times. So I'm not against you in this prop, but I'm not supporting it either.
Tony, another one that I really like from a value perspective is no sacks in the game at all. We've already discussed this to some degree, but no sacks in the game is plus 2,000. And, we've talked about how the Rams are going to struggle to get to Brady, but let's talk about how the Pats are going to struggle to get to Goff. I mean, the bottom line here is the Pats really don't have any major rushing defense. Their front 4 are not sack machines. Their linebackers aren't sack machines. They do get sacks, but I think Goff is going to drop back and release pretty quickly as well. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of Todd Gurley coming out of the backfield. He's a better pass protector than C.J. Anderson, and he also is a better valve for some quick outs and maybe a couple of wheel routes here or there. At plus 2,000, Tony, no sacks in the game. What are your thoughts on that?
If you want to evaluate price for at least risk and reward, it's probably not great because it's a prop. But I agree with you 100%. First and foremost, New England, they play kind of a bend and don't break kind of defense. You outlined it almost perfectly. They only had, I think, 20 sacks during the regular season. That's middling. That's below average. Maybe I'm not right about that. I'm just off the top of my head. The Rams had 41, which are ranked about 15th in the regular season, I believe. And I couldn't agree more. Gurley only carried the ball 4 times to go back even to the last one. This game is going to be a hand the ball off. Who's going to run the ball better? Who's going to make the mistake? I like everything you guys have said for the most part, and support it too.
Ralph, another prop that I'm interested in, just from a value perspective, is James Devlin to score a touchdown at plus 1,200. Now I understand that James has not scored a whole lot of touchdowns and that he's their fourth or fifth, or eighth running back coming out. But the bottom line is, one thing we've seen with Belichick every year that they've been in the Super Bowl is expect the unexpected. And they are running a 21 offense. James Devlin is actually in the game a lot as a fullback. I see them at the goal line, with Sony or James White playing behind Devlin and having a quick handoff for a 1-yard score. At plus 1,200, I find there to be value there.
Well, let me just jump back 1 second, if I may, on your sack prop. They did allow 21 sacks on the year, but 6 games this year, Prez, out of the 18 games the Patriots have played, they did not allow a sack. And again, that changed down the stretch. So again, jumping back to the sack, I agree with that. And that's not even a prop I looked at, but thanks for bringing it up. As far as James Devlin's concerned, James Devlin has only had a carry in 3 games this year. He's had a total of 6 carries. But in each of those 3 games, against Tennessee, 1 carry, 1 touchdown. Against Minnesota, 4 carries, 2 touchdowns. Against Miami, 1 carry, 1 touchdown. He's touched the ball 3 games. He's scored 3 touchdowns. So you have a prop where you're in the position at the 1-yard line. They have plays made for him. If he's going to get the ball, he's going to score a touchdown. So again, I love taking a long shot prop like that.
Excellent. And I want to just talk about one other prop that really is of interest to me, and that is first quarterback to reach over 100 yards. I really like Jared Goff here at plus 100, and my reasoning is simple. I feel like, and we've spoken about it, since Gordon left New England, we're really seeing New England change their offensive style. They're coming out and they're running the ball. And when Brady is throwing the ball, he's throwing it, much shorter distances than Goff, if you will. It's going to take a while for Brady to get to over 100 yards, where I feel like Goff could do it in their second possession. With Robert Woods lining up and stretching the field, his average, he's averaging over 15 yards on every single catch. The guy's a first down machine. You also have Cooks coming out, lining up at wide receiver, and he's getting a lot of yards after the catch. I think that you have a situation here where New England is going to run the ball more than the Rams, and when New England throws the ball, it'll be a shorter distance than the Rams. At even money, Tony and then Ralph, I think Goff's the bet here.
If you approach your props as you see game situation, which is the way you should approach them to some degree, if New England's not playing catch up, they're going to run the football. I agree with you. And if you're going to look at tools surrounding the quarterback, Goff is much more equipped to throw for 100 yards before Brady.
Yeah, and
Steve, I'm agreeing with you again. But if Brady gets behind in the first quarter, they're not going to panic. They're not going to change
exactly.
And if I'm Bill Belichick, I am going to make sure that I have 8 guys in the box. And I have a young quarterback who's going to beat me. I am not going to let C.J. Anderson and Gurley beat me. So I agree with you in my philosophy, the way I see the game being played. 8 men in the box. Goff is going to have to throw to move the team. And if he's forced to throw, even if you're only getting dink and dunk 7 and 8 yard passes, they add up quickly.
Ralph, in keeping with the exact same philosophy, another prop that I'm betting is most time of possession. I'm going to take New England here at minus 135. Now, I don't know if you have the statistics, but we saw the Giants, when they beat New England, hold the ball for, close to 40 minutes in that game. And since then, I don't think we've seen it as lopsided. I think we've seen New England sort of adjust to that. And in keeping with what we're talking about with New England running the ball a lot, as well as New England dinking and dunking when they do throw the ball, I feel like the Rams can score quicker than New England. And when New England scores touchdowns, I think we're going to see 7, 8 minute, 9 minute drives. I don't see a 9 minute drive out of the Rams. I think the Rams are going to, Gurley and CJ have a greater potential of breaking than Michelle and White. And like we spoke about with the wide receivers, I think the wide receivers are going to average a longer distance. You know, Julius Edelman is going to catch the ball. He's 7 yards, 8 yards. White's going to get 4 yards, 5 yards. You know, I think New England is going to control the pace of the game, and I think they're going to control the possession. So, Ralph, we'll go to you. New England minus 135 most time of possession.
Well, you know, again, looking at the stats, in the regular season, New England was number 7 at 31.5. In the playoffs, which you, of course, have to look at, they are averaging 39 minutes time of possession. I mean, that's incredible. So, again, you're looking at current form, how teams have played. You're looking at how a team progressed at the postseason, and you're finding value in a prop. And, you know, we've talked about this often. You have Super Bowl side in total, there's no hidden value. When you're putting up 1,000 props, you're taking numbers from last year, looking at season averages, and you're supposed to do exactly what you did. Dissect the information you have to find value where you're getting a positive number.
He's Ralph Michaels. I'm the Prez. Tony Finn with us. All three of us you can find at WagerTalk.com. Boys, anything quick to add, Tony?
Enjoy the game. Drink as much as you can. Eat as much as you can. Don't hold back.
Ralph?
You know, it's we talked about correlating props with the Super Bowl, but don't take an offer. Don't correlate every prop because you like one team or one total. Make sure you have some props that are outside the normal process. You can have a field goal prop or a player prop that isn't directly correlated with the game. So if the game does not go the way you want, you still have a chance to recoup your profits.
I agree 100%, Ralph. Great point. Guys, thanks for joining us. Listeners, please make sure to comment. I'll respond to almost all of you. And tomorrow we'll have Marco D'Angelo on, and we'll hear his thoughts on props as well as over and under in the game and the side. Fun show. Love having you both, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.